Hey, welcome back, everybody. Once again, we are returning to the WWF Hasbro review videos. So this is actually the startup of Series 4, and it is the second release among the Hasbro figures in 1992. As I said before, you saw one release in 1990 and another release in 1991. But once you hit 1992, Hasbro started putting out multiple releases, and you start to find from this point onward that the number of releases or the amount of figures per release have gone down. You're looking at 12 figures, Series 1, 15 in Series 2, with the Smash being a re-release. So again, technically 14 figures, 14 new figures, and then another 12 figures in Series 3. So from Series 4 to Series 11, you're only looking at one series, Series 5, that actually had double digits in released figures. So this is, since we're only looking at 8 figures for this series, it should easily fit into one video, so no part 1 or part 2, etc. Now, this is the last line of figures that I actually remember as a kid. As I've stated before, we had a ton of Series 1 and a ton of Series 2 figures. We never had anything from Series 3, and we had 3 key figures from Series 4. And those are really the most important figures of childhood, I think, because those are the figures, obviously, they were released later, and I was older, so I had a better memory of those figures than any of the others. And I'll point them out as we go over each individual figure. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of back history or anything, I don't think, for this particular video. I'm hoping for this video to keep it strictly to, talking about the figures and their actions and whatnot, but you know me, sometimes I like to blabber on, so we'll see what comes up with each figure we discuss. So the first one I want to talk about, and it is not only the most important figure of this particular series, but probably the most important Hasbro figure of childhood period, and it is Bret the Hitman Hart. So Bret Hart was one of those figures I had as a kid, and probably the #1 most utilized Hasbro figure ever. I mean, it's just a perfect figure all around. Obviously, I like the Series 8 because it's got a better color scheme, but you can't deny what the Series 4 figure meant to me. And this was one of those figures when I did my favorite Hasbro tournament that I legitimately thought was going to come out at #1. If not #1, maybe he'd fall to the Undertaker for second place or something. Why? Those were, again, important figures of childhood. So, Bret the Hitman Hart, as we know, key member of the Hart Foundation. Around 1984 to, let's say, 1991, you had the Hart Foundation, multiple-time tag team champions. Bret Hart was never one of those super monstrosity guys, super with just built with muscles. I mean, he was built, of course, no doubt, but he wasn't like your Lex Luger type, your Ultimate Warrior, guys that are really, big buff, bodybuilding looking type guys. As strong and in shape as he was, there just wasn't comparison between those guys. So one of the great things about Bret Hart of the 1990s, I guess Vince McMahon and WWF, they were trying to move away from the steroids they're basically prevalent during that time period. It was in the news. All these guys were getting tested. They were coming out, admitting to drug use and whatnot. So they had to use a clean member on the roster. And Bret Hart, he's one of those guys who come from a good family, a good wrestling family. Bret Hart, his real life brother-in-law, Jim Neidhart, they obviously wrestled under, who was it? I'm trying to remember the father's name. Was it Stu Hart? Yeah, that's it, Stu Hart. Stu Hart Wrestling in Canada. And Bret Hart had one of the most remarkable careers ever And there's very few people who can really hold a candle to what Bret Hart achieved. Kind of like what I was talking about in Series 3 with Macho Man. There were certain guys who were pushed to that Intercontinental Champion level before, getting a higher push to Heavyweight Championship. And Tag Team Champion, Intercontinental Champion, multiple time Heavyweight Champion, Royal Rumble Champion, highlighted multiple WrestleManias. I mean, this guy was just everywhere, not only in the 80s, but in the 90s as well. And then the late 90s came. His contract was... This is probably better talked about for the Series 8 figure than the Series 4, but once his contract wasn't renewed by WWF, they didn't really give him the pay increase that he deserved. He went to WCW. Not the same career over there, obviously, but, I mean, he was still champion. He was still doing his thing. Absolutely, I mean, the figure itself, I mean, it's just like the Series 3 Hulk Hogan. Same fighting pose. And a very simple feature, action feature. And the thing about him, he's got literally the greatest body slam pose among the Hasbro figures. So another key element why I covet the Bret Hart figure so much. I didn't have this particular figure on my top 10 list. Only a special mention. I believe the Series 8 Bret Hart. I think I had it number 3 if I'm not mistaken. So, I've been saying 92 figures like ever since the beginning. I knew it was somewhere in the 90s. I just didn't have an exact number. Just prior to making this video, I just went and counted the figures on my shelf, and there's actually 94 figures. So I counted those figures and kind of pointed out which ones I didn't have. I was down to 9, so it looks like I have 85 out of 94 figures carded. And, when you get like tag teams, Rockers, Legion of Doom, Nasty Boys, Bushwhackers, I'm counting that. Obviously, that's 2 figures knocked out right there on one single card, but that's how they were released. They weren't released on single cards, so I'm still counting the tag teams as 2 figures for that pack. I had no idea I was that close to completing the carded Hasbro line. I mean, that is so amazing. Problem is, I legitimately will have to take my butt back overseas in order to make the type of money I need to in order to pay for those things, because your regular 9 to 5 stateside job just ain't gonna cut it, because you literally do less work overseas than you do, in the States. So, yeah, mostly it's because most people just simply don't want to go work in a combat zone, but it really isn't as bad as a lot of people think, especially nowadays. But, will I pick up the remaining figures? Of course, but as of right now, I'm going to try and pick up a little by little as I can. I kind of forgot where I left off. I always talk about I got memory problems, so sometimes I go on these little tangents and I always forget where I was before. But I think you guys seen enough with the Bret Hart figure. Second one is the Undertaker. Now, the Undertaker is yet another figure I had as a kid. Again, outside of Bret Hart, the most played with action figure among the Hasbro line. I mean, it's just an absolutely fantastic likeness. And this, to me, will always be my Undertaker. Later on, when he started transitioning to like this little biker guy and whatnot, and what other... I kind of see these stupid gimmicks sometimes when I watch these little wrestling videos, and some of the gimmicks they show is like... I don't know, he's like a preacher, or I don't know. It's after my time stopped watching wrestling, so I really can't talk about it because I really don't have the knowledge, because I wasn't watching wrestling when all these additional gimmicks went on. I think keeping the name Undertaker for 30 years was remarkable. He wasn't one of these guys who went through like 20 different gimmick changes. One single gimmick, I mean, they may have upgraded or altered with the times, but he was always the Undertaker. And I can't ever keep this urn inside his hand, but another perfect figure from childhood. And I've talked about it a million times, and every time I see one of these figures, I'm going to continue to talk about it. One of the reasons I didn't like extended arms, and you know, there's really nothing wrong with the extended arm per se. The whole point of me not enjoying the extended arm is because as a kid, this arm actually broke off. So basically, you were just fighting with that part of his arm. But hey, you know, we still made use out of it. You know, that never ended. But with the separation of the legs, perfect stance, perfect playability, punch, clothesline, body slam, everything you need for fighting attributes of an action figure, this one has it. Great, awesome detail. You know, it's just an awesome piece. And they call this the Tombstone Tackle. Why is it a Tombstone Tackle? It's just, you know, one of those little Texas tornado wind-ups. So you're not tackling anybody. What's that all about? But Undertaker, when did he come in WWF? I want to say 1990, but it may have been like late 89 or something. So this guy just barely missed the LJN rage, and probably would have had if LJN wasn't sold to Grand Toys in Canada, if they had come out for another year or two, yeah, Undertaker would have been a huge piece of that line. And Random Treasures actually came out with a pretty good one. My buddy Eric has actually made me the same Undertaker months before Random Treasures had their figure released. Because I have so many contracts with him or whatnot, so many commissions, I'm waiting for all the figures to be completed before I get that box sent. So it's taken quite a while to get them all in, but that is one of the mega figures I'm hoping to acquire soon, is the LJN Undertaker. Positive piece. You know, I think 2005 or 2008, something like that. Undertaker won his first Royal Rumble. Again, long after I finished watching wrestling, probably almost a decade later. But what I found fascinating about that is you've got probably your biggest superstar ever. I mean, the man that stayed with your company for 30 years. I mean, this is like, you know, Greg Valentine level, you know, determination to stick with one company and not want to, you know, change to these different promotions and stuff, you know, swapping from back and forth between WCW and WWF, etc. Yeah, a guy like that probably went, you know, to Japan and everything every now and then, but I don't ever remember Undertaker going anywhere else. Not even, you know, temporarily, but he really will go down as one of, if not the biggest legend. I'm always going to say Hulk Hogan at #1, but nobody had the longevity that The Undertaker did. And to be a man in his 50s and still doing what he was doing, remarkable. Alright, the next one, and this is the third of 8 figures, and this is actually the last figure that we had as kids. Now, Davey Boy Smith is one of the 9 figures I do not have on card. And it's so odd to kind of look at the different figures I do have on card and then to see the figures that I'm missing. And it's I can understand a Series 2 Dusty Rhodes. You know, you're looking at like a $600 to $1,200 figure on card. You know, price is there, of course. You're not going to get that Series 8 Bret Hart, you know, somewhere between $350 to $600. Yes, I understand getting, you know, not having those cards, but British Bulldog, you know, this figure on card is in the 175 to 250 range usually. So obviously, in comparison, much more affordable. As much as I love this figure, and as much as I love the British Bulldog, you know, not just growing up, but even by today's standards, one of the 6 greatest wrestlers of all time, bar none. I mean, the man was absolutely amazing. It's just one of those figures that I just don't feel constitutes the need to spend $200+ on. That's why I'm trying to wait and see if I could find this one for like 125, 135 range. I mean, to me, that's where the value is. Once you start hitting 175, even above 150, it's just I just don't see the value there. I am going to get a British Bulldog on card one day, but it's just not happening right now. So again, had the figure as a kid. One of the more played with action figures, of course. And, he's just another one of those guys with the gorilla press, a very repetitious action figure. And I said it in video 1. Hasbro just recycled bodies over and over again. They recycled the bodies, chopped off the head, put a new head mold on, put up a new paint job. You got a whole new character. Not necessarily like Remco, but close enough. Remco's, all the figures basically had the exact same body for the most part, but at least they changed some things here. So, Davey Boy Smith, he and Dynamite Kid, and what was Dynamite Kid's name? I actually had it. Tom Billington. For whatever reason, I keep thinking Billingsley. Tom Billington. So they wrestled, obviously, in the United Kingdom. Came over, came across the pond and joined WWF in the mid-'80s. So a lot of people actually thought that Dynamite Kid was the mega superstar of the tag team. And kind of see, his acrobatics in ring and everything. I can understand that. I've become a huge fan of Dynamite Kid, since I started my collecting days. Because I didn't know anything about that character. When I think British Bulldog, this is it. I didn't know of the British Bulldogs. It was always simply the British Bulldog. And, Davey Boy Smith was really the only person I knew about. And once I got into LJNs and learned about Dynamite Kid, obviously I had to know more about that character. Was an absolutely amazing talent in ring. Really was holding the British Bulldog tag team together. But he was, for a smaller guy, he was extremely cocky. And with all those high-flying moves he did, ended up damaging his back. And, really opened up the airwaves for Davey Boy to get his own run. And this guy was built like a Mack truck himself. Strong, athletic, amazing talent. The 1995 Royal Rumble will always be my highlight for Davey Boy. Shawn Michaels came in at number 1. Davey Boy came in at number 2. First 2 in, last 2 out. That's why the 95 Royal Rumble will always be one of my top 5 favorite Royal Rumbles. The match as a whole was so-and-so, but that aspect of the tournament was remarkable. I don't know if anyone has ever repeated that type of instance, but it makes sense why Davey Boy Smith, why he's constantly in Royal Rumbles, and why he's always a threat to win. The man was just so remarkable. And they also did this battle royal in London. It may not have been in London. I'm trying to think. I'm going to say London because I don't know the exact location. And, winning that battle royal in front of the home crowd, which was awesome. So, Davey Boy was married to Bret Hart's sister, Bret and Owen's sister, and obviously part of the Hart family and everything, and he actually had a tag team with Bret Hart himself, of course. Later on, finally getting his real push as the superstar that he deserved to be, finally pinned Bret Hart himself and captured the Intercontinental title from Bret. And what I remember about that match in particular was maybe not the match itself, but what happened afterwards when, Bret's sister comes in and they kind of, have this nice little family embrace and everything. And, Bret does the right thing, kind of does what the Hogan did with the Warrior. Raise the hand up, let him know that, he approves of, of his replacement as champion. So, I'm trying to think. I think Bret defeated him in order to recapture the Intercontinental belt. I could be wrong about that. Again, my memory is shot. So I'm trying to give you guys the information the best that I can recollect. But this stuff happened 30 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. So, again, it's such difficult for me to remember all this stuff. British Bulldog, just a beautiful figure. One heartbreaking thing about Davey Boy Smith, the man was notorious for drug use, and it's what got him kicked out of WWF in the first place. You know, he was brought back, kind of ran the same issues. Went to WCW, didn't really have the type of push or the type of success that he did before. Returned to WWF once again. The man was just a beloved character. I guess a fan favorite of Vince McMahon and with the crowd, the WWF crowd. I think he died in the early 2000s, 2000, maybe 2001, something like that. Again, just another really young guy, in shape guy that I think he was, 38 maybe or something. I don't think he was even in his 40s at that point. Kind of learning about that that hits you hard, like hearing about the death of Elizabeth, for example. It's something that you wouldn't see coming. But Davey Boy Smith, if you're looking for Series 4 figures, British Bulldog right there along Bret Hart and The Undertaker, definitely must-haves. The next figure, this one looks like a French card. This card kind of bothers me in general. It is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So the reason being, the part down here where it says Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the lettering is so, the lettering is like that thick. Trying to get all the verbiage in there. So when you put the figure on the card, he sits up much higher than other figures. So when you get like these little protective cases and you try to put him in there, it doesn't close up because, again, he sits too high on the card. So it doesn't fit in there, and that really sucks. I don't speak French, so I have no idea what the action feature would be on this thing. Ricky Steamboat, LJN with black pants, that whole ninja thing, that's not what I grew up with. This right here, this is Ricky Steamboat that, I knew as a kid. Really, this is the only Ricky Steamboat that I knew as a kid. And, to me, it is an absolutely fantastic figure. So, you have multiple ways. One of those other figures that come with multiple accessories. Whether you wear the cape up or you wear the cape down, either way works. I normally keep it with down, but it's just more flashy with the cape up. Because he is a high flyer. And I generally use that for a lot of guys who do a lot of acrobatics and, use the turnbuckle a lot to, drop elbows or flying clotheslines or flying drop kicks, whatever. So I understand the need to create fused legs on this particular figure. But he's not exactly... From the legs down, I don't like it. The waist up, I think this is a fantastic look. For those, kids in the 70s, early 80s, growing up with 80s LJN and whatnot, during that time period, I can understand you might hate this look. But again, me, raised in the era of Hasbro's, I absolutely love this figure. I think this had the potential to be a top 20, 25, maybe top 30 figure, but with the fused legs, it kind of really depreciates the value that I covet for these figures. And with Hasbro being producing so many great figures, I mean, a simple aspect like this could turn this from a number 30 placement to like a number 79 placement. So Ricky Dragon Steamboat. What do I know about Ricky? In all honesty, I think the only reason, because he was obviously, Intercontinental Champion in the 80s, and just prior to his reign, before he dropped the belt to Honky Tonk Man, I think Ricky was just trying to spend more time with the family, or that, at least that's how what I heard. And so Vince McMahon really had this plan to keep him as a long time or a long tenured Intercontinental Champion, but family comes first, and so they had to make new plans. I think it was Hulk Hogan that actually pushed or recommended that the Honky Tonk Man take over as Intercontinental Champion, and they had their match. Honky Tonk Man was victorious, and for the next 400 some days, Honky Tonk Man became the longest tenured Intercontinental Champion in WWF history. So obviously not a lot of backstories with Ricky Steamboat. I'm wondering if it was Randy Savage. So when I did the Series 3 release, I was talking about Randy Savage's Intercontinental run, and I couldn't remember who he dropped the belt to. And I think it may have been Ricky Steamboat. So, they had a nice little feud going on. And if that's the case, it shows a nice little transition from Intercontinental Champion to Intercontinental Champion. I don't know. Randy Savage to Ricky Steamboat to Honky Tonk Man to the Ultimate Warrior to, I think, Texas Tornado, or maybe it was Mr. Perfect. Man, they all bleed together. But I guess anyone could look that up and find out the details. Ricky Steamboat. Now, the last 4 figures are all tagged, or they're both tag teams, so they will be on a dual release card. I never had, obviously, any tag team outside of the Series 2 Rockers during a kid. But man, do you know how crazy in love we would have been with these figures if we had them as a kid? And, having those first 3 figures with Bulldog, Bret Hart, and Undertaker, I'm surprised we never came across these. But like most kids, you only see them when you're at the store. And where did I ever see Hasbro? Toys R Us. I don't remember Hasbro ever being in KB Toys or anything like that. I can only remember them, to the best of my knowledge, in Toys R Us. So, and it's not like you go to Toys R Us, every weekend or anything. It had to be like, I don't know, I'm trying to think growing up in Chicago, I'm trying to think the Toys R Us that was by us. Maybe there was one in a mall or something. Maybe there was like one next to a Target. I can't remember. But that would be like the only thing is like maybe we're at another store and Toys R Us was like right next to it. That would have been reason for us to go in and take a look around. But obviously one of the more expensive figures I collected on card. I think this one set me back about $350 or something. Somewhere in that range. And I'm trying to think, but I think the carded figures were probably the first carded Hasbros that I purchased, or the tag teams were the first carded figures before I started getting all these different individual cards. And I said it before, your house burns down and you lose everything and you need to start a collection over and again. Your best bet is to start with the more expensive figures because you can always buy, these bundles, these lot of figures, and save some money that way. But you start with the more expensive figures first, and later on it's easier to spend less on this, or spend less on the cheaper figures than to spend more on the more expensive ones. So that's how I kind of look at it. But Legion of Doom, amazing pieces. I kind of look at these. I kind of think of the release from Ringside Collectibles with 1-2-3 Kid or 6. Again, to me, he'll always be 1-2-3 Kid, Sean Waltman. But calling him 6, no, I won't do that. I won't refer to him as X-Pac. I don't care. I might read it off the package if that's what it says, X-Pac. But for the most part, 1-2-3 Kid, 99.9% of the time. And so that's what this kind of reminds me of. And then, of course, the Razor Ramon NWO with the same hand pose. But obviously, it was something that predates that by about 31 years. Legion of Doom. It was hard during my most recent tag team tournament because if we were simply going off of the tag team of my personal favorite tag team, I think Legion of Doom would have won that tournament. But my tournament wasn't just about the tag teams themselves. Of course, as I say with all my tournaments, it still is a figure tournament, right? So in that case, the playability and the simple design of the figures had to play as much a role as anything else. So Animal, like many Legion of Doom figures, seems to always have the best face paint, so he's always going to be the better figure. Much better pose with the legs open, and another little slamming pose. If your kid's playing around with these, occasionally the spikes will bust off. So if you're a buyer or collector and you're looking for these type of figures, you want to make sure all the spikes are there. Does it mean that they have any broken spikes that someone won't buy it? No, there's always going to be a buyer, but that's something to kind of keep in mind. Just a beautiful overall figure. And I still think that the Legion of Doom from Hasbro is quite possibly two of the greatest figures of the series, of the line, right? And I couldn't even find room to put these guys in my top 10. I couldn't even put the Nasty Boys in my top 10. I think the Nasty Boys are even better. So it's just it just sucks because they're just such amazing pieces. Now, he does have like this Bob Orton thing, like the number of Hasbro figures does have, like the Bob Orton LJN with the with the hand backwards, which is stupid. But overall fighting ability, this I think is obviously better than Animal. Problem being, you're going back to the fused legs. I love the fact that they separated the figures, gave them their own unique pose and body shape. They're not just mimicking one another or mirroring one another. But at the same time, they could have done something better than this. Would I have taken like a Randy Savage Series 1 type pose or something like that? Absolutely. I mean, that's just one example they could have utilized. But Legion of Doom. And I said it in Series 3. I really think that these were the only guys really qualified to defeat natural disasters and recapture the heavyweight or the tag team belts. And they always do so well in Royal Rumbles or Battle Royals or whatnot. You think once one guy comes in and man, they're about to tear it up in there, but not too long, one of the guys get tossed out, and it kind of sucks because when you see a lot of these tag teams in those Royal Rumble matches, you just want to see them constantly be side by side and just working together, but it really is every man for himself. The last figures from the Series 4 1992 release are the Nasty Boys. Again, on card, these figures will probably cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of about $350 to $400, maybe $450. And I kind of messed up on this one when I bought this because you know what? No, it may not have been this. It may have been Demolition I'm thinking of. You start watching something on eBay and someone sends you an offer. You either hit accept or decline, or if they allow the option for counteroffer, you have a counteroffer. And I meant to hit the decline or counter or something, and I ended up hitting accept. So, but I don't think that was for this. I think it was for Demolition. And I ended up like $400 or something, crazy amount of money. Because I committed to it, I wanted to pay for it, but whew, what a ripoff. Again, I just don't value these figures that much. So, but the Nasty Boys. All right, so Jerry Saggs overall has the much better fighting pose, and with the spreading of the legs, hands out fighting pose. Again, he just has that simple, what do they call it for him on here? They call it the Punk Pounder. I actually like that one. That one's not bad, actually. But this one, Jerry Saggs, is one awesome figure. To me, the Nasty Boys are one of the key elements of WCW. I don't care how much time they ever spent in WWF. I used to watch them in WCW every now and then when I'd be flipping through the channels, and, the Nasty Boys are fighting, and what happens? They kind of like rub their their armpits in their guy's face. It was disgusting and it was hilarious, and these guys were just so. They made awesome bad guys. I really enjoyed them as bad guys, but they also became baby faces too. So they're one of those tag teams, one of those wrestlers who kind of swap back and forth. Brian Knobbs. The only downside with the Brian Knobbs figure is going back to the extended arm. Now this one doesn't work, as you can see, but you know how it works. You just push the arm back and it kind of flings forward. And this one's called Nasty Sizer. I like it. Nasty Sizer. Absolutely fantastic look. Not as good again as Jerry Saggs, but I do think that the Nasty Boys truly deserve to be like one of those figures that should be on anyone's top 10 list of most perfect Hasbros. I just couldn't do it. If I ever wanted to do another countdown, 11 through 20 or something like that, I would try my best to get these guys in the top 20. I think they deserve it. They're such perfect figures. Some of them they're probably the most coveted tag teams. Yeah, you could talk about Smoking Guns, but Series 11 figures, single card or loose, again, and you're looking at a couple $100, $250 a piece for those. So at least these guys are a little bit more affordable, usually hovering in the $45 to $75 range. And I talked about these guys in the past, and it always drove me nuts. One of the things that used to get me, so back in, I don't know, let's say a year ago or so, because I pretty much have been living on eBay the last couple of years during my collecting phase, and so I pretty much can tell you what any seller will get for a certain figure based on their sale history, based on how many watchers they have, etc. And so a lot of time I see the Nasty Boys sell for like $75, and so I'm like, okay, $75, that sounds fair. And so I'll do a buy it now for the tag team of $75. You'd get some views, the occasional watcher. Maybe if you're lucky, you'd get like one or two offers every month or two. But really, no movement. Then you'd go to this other guy's site, and he might start the auction at like 99 cents. But as soon as that auction, dwindles down, those same exact figures in the same exact condition, or even worse than what you had posted, would end up selling for like $150, $160. And that used to always kill me. And again, nowadays, you're looking at like $50 figures, but it just shows you how much the market can change in such a short period of time. Nasty Boys, they are, right there with like, Ric Flair. When I kind of think about the original San Francisco, I don't know if I'm going to do another review of those figures. Last year when I did the review of the 3 series or 4 series, I think that should have been sufficient. But at the same time, I added a few more cards, obviously, since then, so I might have to redo another one. Yeah, that's not a lot of stories with Nasty Boys. They were tag team champions. They did defeat the Hart Foundation for the titles, and I want to say it seemed like everything happened in either 92 or 1990, but I want to say the 1990 Royal Rumble. I have all these VHSs. I've watched a few to kind of like get that, recollection back, but they all bleed in together, especially when you're watching them back to back. So, and I have all these Survivor Series, all these WrestleManias and Royal Rumble tapes, and I haven't watched all of them. I've been meaning to. I mean, I've got this room set up for TV viewing, but I just don't ever come down here and do it. So, shame on me. Again, guys, 8 figures out of Series 4, 1993 release. 1992 release. Series 3 and Series 4 were released in 1992. And then once you get to Series 5, 6, and 7, those were 1993 releases. and then 8 through 11 were released in 94. We will talk about each of those series as the time comes. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I will end the video here. Hopefully this is still enjoyable for everyone. I know I don't have the best backstories for a lot of these things, but hopefully you just get a kick out of reviewing each of the figures. And maybe you found something that maybe you didn't know you were missing and you now need. So if I could help you out in that respect, I'm pretty proud about that. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to y'all soon. Goodbye for now.